I do want to just show you my Course in Miracles books. Just so you know that how many, I think I read it 7 times. And I started it in that phase of my life where it's like everything was a sign. I mean, every idea I had and wrote on a napkin is in this book still. It was like, oh, I'm not getting rid of that, you know. So it's like this whole journey of my experience. And I started to date it after a while because it was interesting how, like, I'd have these underlines, and then it's like they didn't move me at all the next time I read them, but this over here really moved me, and so I started to date it, you know, so I could kind of track my progress. And we have come to our hearts by getting our minds out of the way enough, and that's, you know, what this course did for us, is given us that impetus. I mean, I just, when I started reading that, I just kept in my heart, but it was sort of like neon lights, you know, true, you know, and it was all about my thinking. It was all about my thinking. It was like, my God. And, you know, I had always heard, you know, as a kid, you hear about the ego. It's somebody who thinks too much of themselves, you know, and you're called the Queen of Sheba if you think too much of yourself. I had never even heard of the ego being also that part of yourself that puts yourself down. So, I mean, that was really amazing to me to find that in A Course in Miracles. And I really absolutely loved that course. It was one of the hardest things for me when I was told I would receive a new Course in Miracles. I might as well just tell you about that. Yeah. Because you think, I mean, when my first books were published, I gave everyone who had been helpful with it this book. I didn't give them my new book. I gave them A Course in Miracles because this was so life transforming. That's what I wanted everybody to have. So this all sort of began with a dream. I'd begun my spiritual journey, and it began at my place of work. I had 2 women friends who got pregnant within days of each other. And the conclusion of their pregnancies was very different. One had a baby girl named Grace who died at 5 weeks, and the other one a healthy boy. Well, it was that grief. It was that grief that, I mean, I wasn't looking for a spiritual journey. I was working at the University of Minnesota and thought my career was there, and if I was really lucky, I was going to be a mystery writer. But that grief that the 3 of us, so, okay, one woman's grief, she loses her child. And I think we all know how women are. You know, you gather around, you are particularly gentle. Your heart is so completely open to someone who has lost their baby. And what happened, though, was there was somehow that it wasn't like a one-way grief or a one-way comforting. It was like the 3 of us, all began to reveal those griefs that we'd held in our hearts. Basically, kind of that dropping of the mask. And we had them before, but believe me, we had them. We worked together, you know. And it was like we started to get real. We started to talk about things that we'd never talked about before. So I was working there, and the spiritual journey had been going on for a couple of years. We wrote about it. We published books about it. It was just, I mean, it was absolutely marvelous. I'd never been happier in my whole life. And then I have a dream. And the dream said, you can no longer sell your mind for money. Your mind belongs to God.
Wow. Take care of that.
So,
Wow.
yeah. But, you know, you don't necessarily take everything in a dream. You know, I mean, I did. I knew. That's it. Your heart knows. Okay, my heart knew. But I didn't want to leave my job. It was the greatest job I'd ever had. I made money. I had these great friends. We were on a spiritual path together. And we weren't really rich or anything. So I procrastinated. Until what happened, what honestly felt like an affliction visited on me by Jesus. Or, you know, like you hear about in the Bible. I became incapable of doing my job. It was like I had this new mental incapacity that just would not, I mean, it was, my job was fine when I was doing my routine things, but I had to suddenly do this big curriculum thing at the U. And my mind, I could not get it to focus in the way it used to. And it was horrible for me. I mean, it was like I prided myself on being a good worker. And, I'm not sick. I'm not, this, I'm not that. Why can't I do this? And finally realized, go back to the dream, you can no longer sell your mind for money. So I talked to my husband. And eventually, it was about 8 or 9 months later that I left my job. And what I took the dream to mean was that after I left my job, some work for God would come my way. But I had no idea what that was. And I kind of put myself in a few positions where that might become clear for me, but nothing was becoming clear. And I was writing, and my writing was no good, and I was missing my friends. I was horribly lonely. And then my husband got laid off, and I was like, I'm going to have to go back to work. And I started looking at manual labor jobs, like UPS. And it was like, okay, where can I go work where I don't have to use my mind? But I just...
Labor, hard labor.
Yeah, hard labor. But, they want you to lift 75 pounds and stuff like that. So I would, it was sort of... But I knew, it's like, okay, here's the practical thing I should be doing, is getting a job. And it was just compelling, there's something coming, there's something coming. And so when I got to that point, I mean, really every major spiritual insight I've had has come through desperation, some sort of depression, desperation, grief. So I'm desperate. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to go back to work if something doesn't happen here. And when that feeling came to me, I did 2 things that bring me comfort. One was I returned to A Course in Miracles. I'd put it away for a while, and I opened it up to, just sort of, how you do, you open it at random. And I don't think I have that marked right now, but I opened it up to the Manual for Teachers, and the first words I saw were, "Help is here." Oh. And I began to, yeah. That's one of those amazing small things that isn't so small. And I began to feel guided by the teachers of the teachers. The other thing I did, I'm a Catholic, and when I get really troubled, I like to go to that early morning mass where there's about 12 old ladies and me. I'm always the youngest one. And so this had been going on for a couple of weeks. Every single sermon seemed to be about trusting in God. And the one on the day when I got the announcement that I would receive this course was the one of the woman who had given her last 2 copper coins. And what the priest said afterwards was, she gave everything she had. And this isn't about money. This is about giving everything you've got, trusting in God, and knowing that if you give it all you've got, God's going to answer you. So I went home from church that day like, all right, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to wait a little longer. And it happened to be my friend Mary's birthday. She was the woman who had the baby Grace, and we were soulmate friends. And so she was coming over for a cup of coffee, and it was just great. It was like I got the chance to do what we used to always do at work on work time, have our coffee, share what was going on. And we would always talk about our ideas, things, and our dreams. We always talked about our dreams, had really come to know that they were very significant. And so as we were sitting talking on this day, November 25th, 1998, she told me she had a dream in which she'd seen a new Course in Miracles in 4 slender volumes. And as soon as she saw it, I knew that that was what had been trying to get through to me, that I had thrown up my blockers. This was that, one of those things like you would have known if you hadn't had blocks up, you would have known this was what was coming, because, it was just sort of a mission too glorious. Work for God, a little bit too glorious for me to think I'm going to receive a new Course in Miracles. So after that day, it was just about a week later, it was December 1st, 1998, when I began to receive the Course. And it was from the first day a real mission. I had done some channeling with the angel. I told you about that book. This was nothing like the channeling I had known. This was like Jesus had an intent. I sat down and Helen used inner dictation as, you know, to describe what she felt. And I don't use that, but it's receiving, you know, and I think about you as readers. When you read this course, you receive it.